Hello, welcome to Microfiche Microphone. I'm Micah, and on this channel we look at microfiche from the past, old newspaper articles in the public domain. We look at them with our modern eyes, our modern perspective, and see what we can learn from them. On this microfiche time capsule, we are looking back at the Improvement era from July 1934. And this article is entitled Greatness in Men, Charles A. Callis by Bryant S. Hinckley. So, this is one of those people I've actually written an article on, so I know a little bit more about him than some of the other people. I, however, don't have it all memorized, so I'm going to have to refer back to what I had written before, and I will use my own article to fact check instead of Wikipedia this time, because I remember doing quite a bit of research. What do I know about Charles A. Callis off the top of my head? He was president of the Southern States Mission for something ridiculous like 25 years. So he was probably best known for that. He was president of the Southern States Mission for so long, and then he was suddenly called as an apostle. Nobody really saw it coming, although sometimes mission presidents were called as apostles. It did happen. Melvin J. Ballard was another one who was. But it just wasn't really expected. Nobody really saw it coming. So he was kind of a surprise person. And but he was really interesting to me because of how much he cared about missionary work. And in the southern states when he was serving there, they were suffering from a lot of persecution. That was the same area that the Rutger Clausen story had happened, where Joseph Standing, his companion, got shot and killed right in front of him. So, like this is a thing. This is a thing. So, anyway, and I don't remember all of the details about his life, so I think it would be profitable just to read the article and go from there. I think I will be reminded of many things that I have already read, because I'm sure I have read this article before as research for my article on Charles A. Callis. So, anyways, but let's take a look at the article, and this starts with a little blurb. This story is one who loved Jesus with all his whole heart, will be appreciated everywhere, but it will be enjoyed most by those who have come in contact personally with this man of strength and power. Here is one who loved his fellow men and has been greatly blessed for it, blessed with the love of all who know him. Yeah, that's sweet. All right, Charles A. Callis. There are a couple of pictures in this, just at the very beginning. Elder Charles A. Callis of the Council of the 12. Like, what impression do you get? I don't know. It's hard to say. I don't feel like I get a super strong impression of him from his photo. Straightforward, maybe? Like he's looking directly into the camera. Yeah. And then this is Mrs. Callis. It annoys me when they don't say their names, you know. I don't know her first name, but hopefully we will find out. All right. Every chivalrous heart delights to honor those who conquer the malice of their fate through the power of consecrated endeavor. For a man whose worldly inheritance was poverty, whose school days were spent in a coal mine, whose textbooks were heavy tools, whose daily task was to win bread for his widowed mother, to conquer these adverse conditions and to serve with distinction as a state legislator, to qualify for the bar and to succeed as a lawyer, to preach with persuasion and eloquence at home and abroad the revealed gospel of the Master, to preside for 25 years over one of the great missions of the Church, to inspire the lives and direct the activities of thousands of missionaries, and finally to be called to the apostleship as an achievement that challenges the admiration of young and old. To do this requires not only ability of an unusual order, but an unconquerable will and the capacity for prolonged and concentrated effort. Charles A. Callis is a self-made man in the literal meaning of those words. His broad shoulders and strong hands bear indisputable evidence that he has been on intimate terms with hard work, that he has known firsthand just what the laboring man pays in terms of toil for his daily bread. He speaks with a full and sympathetic understanding the language of the laborer. The school of experience through which he has passed has given him an intimate understanding of the plain people and an insight into their problems that few public men have. A man who has worked in the coal mine for 12 hours a day at $2.50 knows the value of $1. I forgot that he had worked in the coal mine. For the better part of 15 years, Elder Charles A. Callis worked in the mines of Colville, Summit County, Utah. He knows what it is to come from the pit after a long, hard day and wash the dust and grime from his face, only to repeat it day after day. There may be young men who think the door of opportunity is closed, that there is no chance for them. Not so. Charles A. Callis spent the impressionable years of his life in work that offered little opportunity for growth and culture. Today, he stands unabashed in any presence, at home in any society. How did he do it? It is the same dramatic and inspiring story of strong men rising from humble surroundings to eminence. The best friend a young man has in not comfort, but the stimulus and challenge that comes from a hard environment, opposition to which awakens his slumbering powers and reveals his hidden resources. The strongest men have not come from cushioned lives. Soft surroundings often breed failure. Charlie, as he is familiarly called, was born in Dublin, Ireland, May 4th, 1865, son of John and Charlotte Quilliam Callis. His father died when Charles was a child. The widowed mother with her children moved to Liverpool, where Charles was baptized and confirmed a member of the church when he was 8 years of age. 2 years later, the family, consisting of the mother, 2 sons, and 2 daughters, left England for Utah. They sailed in the SS Dakota. Did they misspell that, or was it really misspelled like that? Traveling 3rd class because, as he smilingly observed, there was no 4th class. Their coming was made possible through Perpetual Emigration Fund. Oh, that's sweet. A plan adopted by the church for assisting people to emigrate to this country. That's quite cool. The Callis family settled first in Bountiful, Davis County, 3 years later moving to Colville, Summit County, where Charles made his home until he went to the southern states on a mission. In 1893, he was called on a mission to England, and while there, he was made president of the Irish Conference. On his return, he served as stake president of the YMMIA in Summit Stake for 9 years. In this service, he displayed the qualities of a real leader. Cheerful but determined, he faced every obstacle. During one winter, he experienced difficulty in maintaining an organization at Echo, which is located down the canyon from Colville. He had no conveyance. This was prior to the days of the automobile, but before he would allow that association to fail, he walked down and back a distance of 10 miles once each week, giving the lessons and conducting the meeting. Failure is not written in the lexicon of Charles A. Callis. I do remember that story, that he walked to Echo every week. Yeah. In September 1902, he married Grace E. Pack, an experienced and successful schoolteacher who was a woman of sound judgment, superior intellectual endowments, of rare patience and sweetness of character, who knows how to comfort and encourage a missionary boy far from home. She has been a constant support and inspiration to her husband in the discharge of his arduous and responsible duties as president of the mission. She was president of the Relief Society of the mission for 25 years. This union has been blessed with 8 children: Grace, Mrs. Paul Summerhays; Kathleen, Mrs. Spencer A. Larson; Charles Albert, and Nephi Quilliam, twins, deceased; Josephine, Mrs. Irwin Spilsbury; Laura, Paul, John, and Pearl. All right, let's look at some pictures before we go on. Charles A. Callis at the age of 20. I could see him being Irish, He's got kind of the forehead. Grace E. Pack at the age of 21 before her marriage. Well, at least now we know her name. I hate that Mrs. Callis stuff. The Callis family, when they went south in 1906, the children are Grace at right and Kathleen in the center. A lot of girls, yeah. The Callis children, photo made in Chattanooga, Tennessee, 1915. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And those are the 6 living children, yeah? Then they had deceased twin boys. I mean, that was so common back then. I mean, twins living isn't really something that happens very much. So it looks like they have 5 living girls and 1 boy. And then the 2 twins that had passed away were both boys. Charles Albert and Nephi Quilliam. All right. In 1896, he was elected a member of the state legislature from Summit County. This was a historic session. In those days, United States senators were elected by the state legislature. During this session, the contest for the senatorship developed one of the bitterest political fights ever waged in the state of Utah. 53 ballots were cast before a choice was made. There were times when the transfer of 2 votes would have elected the leading candidate. The most powerful and relentless pressure was brought to bear upon Representative Callis, who could neither be intrigued nor coerced to cast his vote against his convictions. This contest was so bitter that the influences employed were so powerful as to test out the moral fiber of every member of the legislature. When these powerful influences concentrated their efforts upon Charles A. Callis, they discovered no weak spots. He is sound to the core. Many of his influential constituents were disappointed in the stand which he had taken with reference to the United States Senator, and he went from the legislature with the impression that this political career was ended. But solaced with the satisfaction that his conscience was clear, that he had followed without wavering the light of his best judgment, his rugged honesty and his unyielding integrity won the confidence of friend and foe. Men who could not control his vote developed a wholesome respect for his integrity. In the representative of the Summit County, the miners of Utah had a friend. One of Charles A. Callis's first efforts as a legislator was to provide protection for miners and to safeguard their interests in securing the passage of 3 measures which have been practical and permanent value to all coal miners. The first provided for an examining board which was authorized to grant certificates to those who proved their fitness for the duties of mining boss. Good. Yeah. Get people certified. The second provided that where miners are paid by weight, suitable scales should be furnished, and the coal weighed at the mine so that any subsequent loss or waste was not charged against the men. I'll bet he has personal experience in that. And the third, that emergency supplies, including stretchers, blankets, first aid material, etc., should be accessible at every mine where 5 or more miners were employed. I'll bet he also experienced that. Wow. These measures have resulted in saving the lives of many workmen and adding thousands of dollars to their earnings. Well, good for him. That's really admirable. Soon after the adjournment of the legislature and the solicitation of prominent men in Park City who had watched with interest the career of Charles A. Callis, he ran for county attorney and was elected. He had no academic training, little or no knowledge of the law, in fact no technical preparation for a position of this kind. Now we get a glimpse of the real man, a revelation of the forces that have made him. He resolutely made up his mind to qualify for his new job, a gigantic undertaking, but without hesitation, and in the face of the most stubborn and discouraging circumstances, he took up the task. Among his friends was Joseph L. Rawlings, one of the ablest and best trained attorneys in the state of Utah, who mapped out with care a course of study for the newly elected officer. Following this outline, Charles Callis made arrangements with the county attorney of Salt Lake County to spend whatever time he could in that office studying procedure under the Utah statutes. In addition to this, he secured the necessary books and went to work, and he worked as few men can work. In 11 months thereafter, he took the state bar examination. That's impressive. He described with emotion his impressions and experiences of that eventful day. There were college graduates and men of experience and legal learning all there for examination. Elder Callis felt keenly his handicaps and approached the task with humility and misgivings. To the surprise of the examiners, of himself and of his friends, he made a brilliant showing and passed the examination with distinction. Credit. In fact, he was the only one who received the unanimous vote of the examination board. Wow! This was a major achievement. He was now a full-fledged lawyer, and for 6 years served Summit County with distinction as its prosecuting attorney. During his law practice, he won the confidence of his associates at the bar, and the judges on the bench, and of the clients and of the people. That's crazy because, he basically went to law school by correspondence. He basically taught himself out of books. That's really impressive. I don't know many people who could do that. I sure couldn't. In 1906, he was called to the Southern States Mission, and on the retirement of Ben E. Rich, became president of that mission, where he remained for a quarter of a century. As a missionary and as a mission president, he was preeminently successful. The reason for this is easy to discover when you know the man. Continued on page 435. He loves humanity with the passion and patience of a great soul, and at the same time he possesses a sympathy which is deep and boundless. The love of truth and the love of mankind are shining threads that run through the warp of his life. Here he did his major work. During his administration, the membership in the mission multiplied, branches were organized, chapels were erected, prejudice was allayed, confidence was established, and the work moved securely forward on all lines. More than 4,000 missionaries came and went while he presided. The stimulating contact with this man of conviction and understanding not only quickened their faith and inspired them to finer endeavor, but it gave them a loftier conception of their holy religion and planted in their souls a nobler estimate of man. It is a significant thing to touch effectively the lives of other people. This is a supreme human sacrifice. It takes a high-powered soul to lift men. The hard lessons of his early life have given him a quality of patience which makes most tasks appear easy. His love for mankind makes intolerance impossible. His faith in his fellows and the certitude of his religious convictions give him a quiet air of confidence and a friendly approach that can only come from such sources. If people speak well of his cause, he is quick to express appreciation. If they speak disparagingly, he attributes it to a lack of understanding, and he takes tactful steps to give them a better understanding. When he assumed the presidency of the Southern States Mission, he secured admission to the bar in South Carolina and also in Florida. While he had no time to practice law and preside over a mission, the fact that he was an accredited lawyer added greatly to his prestige as a minister of the gospel, and gave him free entree to circles that otherwise he never would have entered. As a result of this, he was able to establish cordial relations with governors, mayors, and other men of influence and prominence. That makes sense. He was universally esteemed a Christian gentleman and a distinguished citizen in the South, where he lived for many years. President S. O. Benyon, that's Samuel O. Benyon, he was of the First Council of the 70, it just says it right there, yeah, said of him, also known as the Presidency of the 70. It had different names, but First Council of the 70 was one of them. It is a great pleasure to pay tribute to my esteemed friend and longtime associate in the mission field, Charles A. Callis. I know the man and love him. I know the great work he has accomplished and applaud it. He learned at an early age the art of making friends. This precious gift has been a great help to him in his missionary work. He is a natural preacher of the gospel, and through his faith and humility has enjoyed a rich outpouring of the Holy Spirit, so that people everywhere are drawn to the Lord through him. Charles A. Callis will go down in history as one of the great proselytes of the church. His contact with the missionaries and his interest in their welfare knit them together in a bond of friendship and brotherly love that will endure as long as life lasts. Brother Callis's missionary experience, covering nearly 30 years, has eminently qualified him for the great position which he now occupies. Oh, that was his own opinion, yeah. In answer to the question, what has been the greatest inspiration in your life, Brother Callis reverently said, the Lord Jesus Christ has been the greatest inspiration in my life. From my earliest recollection to the present time, I have always had an abiding and intense love for my Savior. I cannot read the story of his sufferings and crucifixions without shedding tears. He is my Lord and my God. I know that he lives, that he is the Christ. He is the Lord and the resurrection of He is the Lord of resurrection and life. Not only do I regard the manner of our redemption with wonder, awe, and gratitude, but I also have love and affection for the way he redeemed us and bought us with his precious blood. In paying tribute to his wife, he said, among other things, a prudent wife is a blessing from the Lord. Sister Callis has conquered difficulties by patience, love, and an unwavering faith in God. During my ministry, more than 4,000 missionaries reported for duty at the mission headquarters. She has cared for them when sick and comforted them when sad news of death of loved ones at home reached them. Well and nobly has she performed her part as a mother and helpmate. The poet says of the male bird and his mate, he sings to the wide world, she sings to her nest. In the ear of sweet nature, which song is the best? The assistance Sister Callis has given me can never be measured this side of eternity. I love that. I think I may have quoted that, but in my article we'll find out. But I really love that he had such a high tribute of his wife. I think that's a really good sign of a good person, that he's willing to admit that his wife had helped him a lot in his life. Back then especially, women had so few rights that they couldn't really speak up for themselves. So having the man stand up and speak up for his wife is really admirable. In referring to his mother, he said with tenderness and emotion, "Throughout my life I have drawn inspiration and strength from the splendid example and teachings of my mother. After the close of the day's work, she taught me to read and to write. She was a wise mother, inspiring in all her children the highest ideals of loyalty to church and to state. Her patience, tenderness, devotion, and love for her children, and her willingness to sacrifice for them are precious to me and hold a sacred place in my memory. Her sublime faith in God and her gentle submission to his will is a constant source of inspiration and encouragement to me." Charles A. Callis is an idealist, but uses practical means to accomplish his ends. His life is a monument of faith backed by high and resolute endeavor. He believes that the Creator supplies quarries, but that he never cuts stone or builds temples without the use of human hands. Trust in the Lord and do good, and verily thou shalt be fed, is one of the divine precepts by which he lives. Deprived of the advantages of scholastic training, he has husbanded with care his time and energy and has drawn inspiration from the great writers and thinkers of the past and the present. Loveliness and beauty in the written and the spoken word fascinate him. He has constantly cultivated the companionship of great minds, and the gallery of his memory is adorned with inspiring scenes in the lives of eminent men and with precious utterances from their lips. This is significant, for it is one of the sources of his growth. If we hang beautiful pictures upon memory's walls and live with these long enough, we cannot do evil. Charles A. Callis has a great soul and a deep appreciation of the beautiful in life, with enough Irish wit to meet any situation. He is teachable and tolerant, with a legal training which gives him a judicial attitude of mind. Permeating all of this is an exalted love for mankind and a sublime and settled faith in God. These qualities make an invincible combination. It is this combination which has lifted him out of the desolation of his youth and put into his soul the desire to lift others and the power to do it. The opportunity has come, and he will do his work. He stands a fearless champion of truth, a soulful and eloquent exponent of the message of the Master, chosen of God, and a friend of man. I want to immediately go over to the article on my website, and this is my article. It also has other articles, but including this one, by the way. But I want to read what I have written on him. And just the biographical part, we can go into some of the quotes if we want to, but I don't know that it's necessary in general. So, Charles A. Callis. I always choose a scripture at the beginning, and this is, "And this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world." Matthew 24:14. I felt like his call as mission president was really like his strongest thing that we would always remember about him. I also think, however, that his dedication to hard work is also one of them. All right, he was ordained 12th October 1933 at age 68 by Heber J. Grant. So, biography. Charles Charlie Albert Callis was born 4 May 1865 in Dublin, Ireland, to John Callis and Susanna Charlotte Quilliam. His father died when he was still young, and his widowed mother moved with him and his 3 siblings to Liverpool, England, where Charlie heard the gospel and was baptized, together with his family, when he was 8 years old. The family moved to Utah in October 1875 when Charlie was 10, funded by the Perpetual Immigration Fund, eventually settling in Colville. And, yeah, we heard about that, yeah? Of his childhood, he related the following experience. When President Joseph F. Smith was presiding over the European mission, I was a little child. I was very sick, so sick that the doctors had given me up. They had told Mother there was no hope for me, but she was filled with faith. She sent for President Smith. He came and laid his hands upon my head and blessed me, and promised Mother that I should live. And by the goodness of God, I am here today, the desires of my heart being that I may be of some little use in the kingdom of God. He said that in 1910. He was close to his mother and praised her in the following language. Throughout my life, I have drawn inspiration and strength. I believe I just read this, yes? Yeah, her tenderness and devotion. Yeah, we just read this in that article, so I don't need to read it again. For 15 years of his young adulthood, Charlie worked 12-hour shifts in the coal mine to support his widowed mother. He was also elected Colville Constable. Then, in 1891, he won a seat on the Colville City Council. In the winter of 1892, Charlie was called on a 5-month mission to Wyoming, and then in 1893 he was called on another mission, this time to Great Britain, where he acted as president of the Irish Conference. You know, it's interesting because in the article they only mentioned the second one. I don't think they mentioned his mission to Wyoming at all. Upon his return to Utah, he was called to serve as Stake Young Men's Mutual Improvement Association Superintendent of the Summit Stake, YMMIA. He served in this capacity for 9 years. During his time as YMMIA superintendent, he had difficulty getting reliable leaders organized in Echo, which is located down the canyon from Colville. He had no mode of transportation to reach it, but instead of giving up, he walked the 10-mile journey every week to give lessons and conduct the meetings. Yeah, they mentioned that. In fact, I might have gotten it from that article. Yeah. In 1896, he was elected a member of the first Utah state legislature. This was a big deal because senators were elected by the state legislature, and that first battle for the Utah State Senate was a bitter one. Many people tried to pressure Representative Callis to vote for a certain candidate, but he could be neither intrigued nor coerced. He voted for precisely who he felt would do the best job. He left the legislature thinking his political career was at an end because of his unpopular votes in the Senate race. He, however, won the respect of every politician for his unshakable integrity. He also legislated for better conditions for the miners, of which he had been one. Yeah. Shortly thereafter, in 1898, he ran for county attorney and won, despite having little or no knowledge of the law and no technical preparation for a position of that kind. People's confidence in his integrity was simply so high that they elected him anyway. With the help of his friend, Joseph L. Rawlings, one of the best trained attorneys in Utah, Charlie mapped out a course of study to help him be fit enough to serve in his post. You know, it's interesting because they didn't mention him in the article. I think that it's kind of important. He's not really a self-made man. He had help, yeah? He got help when he needed it, and he needed it in this case. He spent his free time studying procedure under the Utah statutes and acquired the necessary books to learn all he needed to. 11 months after he took the state bar exam and passed with distinction. He married Grace Elizabeth Pack on 31 September 1902. The two of them had 8 children. In 1906, Elder Callis and his wife were called on a mission to the southern states, where they served in Jacksonville, Florida. 2 years later, and shortly after his release as a missionary, he was called to serve as president of the Southern States Mission. I forgot about that. He served in the mission first with his wife, and then afterwards he was called to serve as president of the mission. Although he had no time to practice law, he was admitted to the bar in South Carolina and Florida, which gave him the prestige needed to do missionary work he otherwise wouldn't have been able to do. His wife served as president of the relief societies in the southern states for 19 years. His tenure as mission president was not what one could consider peaceful. The southern states at that time were full of anti-Mormon sentiment, and some missionaries were subjected to whippings, tarring and feathering, and forcible ejection from communities. You know, it was a lovely place. President Callis strove to make the South safer for missionaries and members by using his legal skills to improve the image of the church. In 1907, for example, while serving as a missionary in Florida, Elder Callis defended a falsely accused elder in court and succeeded in exonerating him and cultivating a spirit of goodwill. See, good for him. A few years later, after an incident in Florida where the 2 elders had been kidnapped and whipped, President Callis met with the governor and secured his promise to try the citizens who had committed the crime. See, also good for him. He was also in a case of 2 elders falsely accused of attempted murder, who were prepared to stand before a prejudiced jury with false witnesses. The judge sympathized with the prejudiced situation and ruled to delay the trial 6 months on the appeal of President Callis, who was also prepared to represent the 2 unfortunate missionaries. The case was eventually dismissed. Awesome. Another of his innovations was to secure what he called a gospel tent. The missionaries had some limited success in the country, traveling without person scrip, but they were often arrested for vagrancy in the cities using the same techniques. Since the church wasn't strong enough in the cities to justify the purchase of a building, President Callis set up a traveling tent where the members in the area would meet. The tent held about 200 people on hard benches, but it helped to establish the church in the areas that had never seen success previously. And that way they're not vagrant because they have a place to stay, yeah? His advice to the missionaries typically consisted of a charge to be frugal and encouragement to spend at least 4 to 5 hours a day tracting. I remember that. He was a big tractor. He was like, no, every day, every single day, you go knocking on doors. Yeah? On 6 October 1933, Elder Callis was chosen to fill a vacancy in the Quorum of the 12. He was ordained 8 days later by President Heber J. Grant. He was well known to the general membership of the church since so many had sent brothers, husbands, and sons on missions to the southern states. It was estimated that he presided over a total of 3,000 missionaries during his tenure as mission president. At the time of his calling, he said, "Brethren and sisters, I stand before you in the depths of humility. I did not receive an inkling that my name would be presented this morning, and I feel one of the weakest of God's creatures. The first miraculous manifestation I received when I was a youth was through President Heber J. Grant, when he delivered a sermon in Colville in the Summit Stake of Zion. The President, whom I dearly love, has always made a profound impression upon me in my life. I love all of the general authorities of the church. I know that they are men of God. I know too, as sure as I stand here, that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the living God. I know by the same power that Joseph Smith is a prophet of God. I am in absolute harmony with all that the general authorities in the church have done. Brethren and sisters, I desire to spend my time in your service. God help me to always be faithful and humble, and to always love his people and his work. I love that. He was finally released from his calling as President of the Southern States in February 1934 after serving for over 25 years in this capacity. In 1940, Elder Callis was sent to Hawaii on church business. That occasion made such a deep impression that he told of the following experience at the following General Conference. A little over a month ago, I was honored by the First Presidency and the Council of the 12 with an appointment to visit the Oahu Stake and the Hawaii Mission and the Japanese Mission in Hawaii. It was one of the finest missionary journeys I have ever had. Before I left the islands, I felt a strong urge to visit those stricken people, the lepers, on the island of Molokai. The only way to reach that place was by airplane. I had never been in one of those machines, but my wife, who accompanied me, urged me to try the plane. When we arrived on the island, a delegation of those afflicted people were there to welcome us with songs. The officer said to me as I approached them, "Go no closer." Irrespective of creed, they came to the services. I spoke to them about the resurrection and of the love God had for them, and in the course of my address I quoted the immortal words of Jesus, which should ring in the hearts of every man and woman in the world. Inasmuch as ye have done it unto one of the least of these my brethren, ye have done it unto me. At the close of my remarks, a brother who was presiding over the meeting, the Justice of the Peace himself a leper, arose and made a response which, for eloquence, I have never heard surpassed. It was the eloquence that comes from the heart, not from the lips. He said, "Apostle Callis, we could not go to Honolulu to attend that big conference, but you have come to us, and you have fed us, and you have come to the least of your brethren. And inasmuch as ye have done it unto us, ye have done it unto the Lord Jesus Christ." And he continued, "We are happy. We cannot greet you with a handshake. Some of us have received the gospel since we were on the island, and the joy and the comfort we receive from the gospel has more than compensated us for our affliction, our infirmities. God will bless you, Brother Callis, for coming to the least of these your brethren." He closed the meeting while my tears were falling fast, and then to think, though I loved this people, I had to pass through them while they withdrew to one side, could not touch them, could not shake hands with them. Oh, brethren and sisters, how blessed we are! It seems to me that God in heaven is preparing a house for his afflicted children, a resurrected body, the glories of which have not entered into their minds to conceive. That's so beautiful. As a member of the Quorum of the 12, Elder Callis gave a series of radio lectures in 1943, which he published in book form in 1945, entitled Fundamentals of Religion. On 12 October 1946, his wife, Grace, passed away. Elder Callis was devastated and spoke of her often. Feeling her presence with him, he said, "After the day's work, when returning to my home, I would invariably call, 'Grace, Grace, where are you?' Now she is not there to meet me. I miss her most." Elder Charles A. Callis died of a massive heart attack on the 21st of January 1947 at age 81. At the time of his death, he was traveling in Jacksonville, Florida, to witness the organization of the first stake in Florida, one of his lifetime ambitions. He and Elder Harold B. Lee organized the stake that day, with the exception of a single ward in Georgia, which they were planning on doing that evening. Elder Callis died on the car ride to Georgia. His last spoken word was his deceased wife's name, Grace. That just gets me in the feels, you know. Oh, that's so sweet. He loved his wife so much. I really love it when we read about people who really, really are dedicated to their partners. It's so lovely to see. It seems like it went really fast, but he wasn't called to the apostleship until he was 68. So he only served for 13 years, and when he died at 81. That's why he didn't feel like he did a lot. But I really love that he visited the lepers colony on Hawaii. That's so lovely of him. How many people have said that? How many people have ever done that? I doubt that there's all that many general authorities who have visited the leper colony. And I'm really impressed with him for doing that. And he just seems like one of those people who loves everyone, who wants justice for everyone, who wants the right things for everyone and just has this incredible love of people. All right, I'm going to skip his quotes because some of them are really long. I'm going to skip down to my own conclusion. Conclusion. What kind of man was Charles A. Callis? He was a hard-working man, laboring for years in the coal mines. He was an ambitious man, which allowed him to become a lawyer without attending law school. He was an intelligent man. He was an obedient and faith-filled man. He was the father of a large group of missionaries. He was an ardent and motivated missionary himself. He believed in the promises of the Lord despite dire situations. He had a clear vision of the present's role in the future. He gloried in the spiritual experiences he had and loved to share them with others. And that is my impression of him. I will include all of my citations, all of my sources for my article that I wrote. There's a lot. So hopefully that will be interesting to you. If you are interested, please take a look down below in the description box. In the description box. And give me a comment. Let me know what you think of Charles A. Callis. I feel like he's one of those people who would have been friends with everybody. And he just wanted justice, peace, exaltation for all. That was like his goal. He wanted everybody to have everything. And I really love that about him. So he's one of those people that I really admire. And I think that we can't underestimate how strong of a person he was and how much he was able to do in his life. Anyway, I hope you really enjoyed that. I did. It's nice to be reminded of some of the people that I had written about before, even if I didn't remember a lot of the details at the beginning. And to be reminded of them, it's like, oh yeah, he was really cool. No, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. Anyway, if you did, please give the video a like and subscribe to the channel, and I hope to see you in the next video.